Welcome back, welcome back, welcome back. I'm Miss Lisa. Like, share, subscribe. This is my YouTube channel where we talk about math and science. Today we're talking about physical science in this book, the nature of sound. We're going to be talking about sound. Last time we talked about waves, we're going to talk about sound. So you don't have to be doing a homeschool class to watch these videos, but these videos were primarily designed for homeschoolers looking for high school math and science. They can buy these older edition public school books for cheap and then watch these videos, and they've got a really cheap science or math class. The homework are in the description, so check what I want you to do for homework. And I tell you what labs to do, and I try to pick labs that don't take a lot of scientific knowledge or equipment so that you get a good hands-on lab-based high school science and math. So check out my other videos too. Algebra 1's fun. You should go watch it. Anyway, so what we're talking about this time is sound. Last chapter, this is chapter 11. Last chapter was 10 about waves, so now we're going to talk about sound. And as we learned in the last video, that sound waves are compression waves. You can think of it like a slinky that you stretch it out and then go. It's more fun with sound effects. And there's places where the slinky gets close together, compressions, and then places where they spread apart. And then here's another compression. So the wavelength is between the compressions. And remember, the symbol for wavelength is this Greek letter lambda. It looks like a little hat or a little teepee. Where the compressions are, where the sound waves are more spread out, they're called rarefactions. I can say that. That's fun to say. Where they're close together, it's compressions. And when it's sound, it starts with a vibration, and the vibration is what causes the sound. And where it vibrates forward, that causes the molecules to compress. And then as it swings back, it causes the molecules to rarefact. And so so there's sound waves going out in all directions. It's not like a slinky, it's like spheres, balls on top of each other of these compressions going out in all directions from the sound waves. Right now I'm talking, the vibrations are coming from my vocal cords as my breath goes over them. As they vibrate, they're causing vibrations in the air, which is going over to my camera, which then is translated into electricity so that you get to hear it, and then it comes out your speakers, which are electromagnets that are turning on and off these cones, making new compressions so that you can hear me. So that's how it works. So what causes sound? Vibrations. Sound waves are compression waves. Now, what is the speed of sound? It depends on what it's going through. What it's going through is called the medium. So it depends on the medium. In your book, you can see on page 323 that the sound in air, in general, because there are things that can change the speed of sound in air somewhat, like temperature. But in general, it's 347 meters per second, which compared to light is extremely slow. You could be at a football stadium and clap your hands really loud, and it takes a while for that sound to make it down to the other area. You could be at a concert and looking over a big arena and you see something drop, and then later you hear the sound. Or a plane can go by really fast. You see the plane go by, and then the sound finally gets to you. So light waves go super fast. They're almost instantaneous. The light that was created on the sun takes 8 minutes to get all the way to Earth. The Earth is so small that light really travels instantly on Earth. And it's why if you're on the phone to someone on the other side of the world, you don't have to wait for it to get to you because it's going through electromagnetic radiation, a form of light we're going to learn. And so it's just instant that you hear them on your phone because these impulses are traveling so fast. So don't get confused. Sound is fast, but it's slow compared to light. Light's super fast, the speed of light. Okay. And it changes the medium. So then they showed that sounds go slower in court at 500 meters per second. It goes, faster. It goes even faster in water. Remember I told you that we're used to hearing in air, so we think it's the best because it's what we grew up with. But really, sound travels faster and further in other mediums that are closer together, like water. And I told you about that when you're at the lake, you have your head above the water, you hear nothing. Sounds like a peaceful day. Maybe a bird. You go into the water and you hear, ee, and it's a boat. You go back up to see the boat. There's no boat. It's so far away, but you're hearing it so much better through the water than the air. You can hear it underwater. You can't hear it above water. Brick is even faster. Aluminum is even faster. So depends on the medium of the speed. So how is sound transmitted? It is molecules knocking against other molecules. And they do a thing talking about like passing a bucket down. And remember when we talked about waves before, that if you're in water in a raft, a wave goes by, you don't go with the wave, you just bob up and down. That the wave is the energy that passes by you. And it's the same thing with sound. The molecules in the air don't go from my mouth to my cat's ears, who's over there. The molecules just are disturbed as the energy passes by, the wave energy. Now, how we hear things is through our ears, and an ear is drawn for you on page 325. So how your ear is, the outer ear is shaped like a funnel. It helps gather the sound. It's the same thing as if you put a hand around your ear to hear better, and you might not do that, but you know what y'all do? Is y'all take your phone and you cup your hand at the bottom to direct the sound to hear it better, don't you? You're some video and it's not sounding good, you'll put your hand just like that to cup that sound, just like your ear cups sound, and make it where you can hear it better. So the outer ear helps catch the sound. It goes down into your ear canal. You're not supposed to like put peas down there or anything. And then there's your eardrum, and it's just this little thin flesh that vibrates. It catches the vibrations, and then those are translated from the eardrum through these three tiny bones. They are the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup, and they're the smallest bones in your body. And they transmit those sound waves over to this area that is where the cochlea is. And it's this snail-looking tube that is full of fluid, and that fluid vibrates, moving little hairs, and then that translates it into nerve impulses that go to your brain and translates it into the sounds you hear. You have an outer ear, a middle ear, and the inner ear. The outer ear gathers the sound. The middle ear amplifies the waves, and the inner ear converts it into nerve impulses and sends it into your brain so you can tell what it is. So now there are people who are deaf, and they can get cochlear implants that can help them hear. I know a lady who, she was born deaf, and usually they don't let people who are born deaf have them because they say that even if they give them the cochlear implants, their brain can't translate it into sound because they've never had sound. But she's really, really good at lip reading and speaking, even though she's been deaf. So they let her do it, and she can hear. She still has to wear hearing aids, and she still lip reads. Like if you're talking to her and you forget and turn away, she can't. She needs the lip reading too. But you know what? I think everybody uses lip reading a lot because now that we have the COVID and everybody's wearing masks, I am just like, what? Can you speak louder? Because the mask muffles it, and then I can't see people's lips. And I realize that seeing the mouth move helps me hear, even though I am a hearing person. Okay, so we talked about the parts of the ear. Now, intensity and loudness is part of the properties of sound. They talk about it in your book on page 328. It says the intensity is the amount of energy that flows through a certain area in a specific amount of time. So I start thinking of intensity as loudness, energy, those sort of things. And whether a sound is more intense or not is how much of that energy, that sound energy, is flowing through an area in a certain amount of time. Intensity decreases with distance, and that makes sense. The further away you are, the harder it is to hear, right? And loudness is how we perceive this intensity. So with sound waves that we perceive as intense, carry more energy, and we perceive them as louder. But it's hard to tell how loud something is. Different sound sources have a different quality of sound, so it's hard to tell, is it sharp or is it loud? So we have a system of telling sound loudness. It's called the decibel system, and it's got a little chart in your book on page 329 that shows you what different things are on the decibel. Like a jet taking off, a jet plane is 150. It hurts at 120. A chainsaw is at 115. A power mower, 110. A vacuum cleaner is at 75. A noisy restaurant could be 80. The average home is 50. Mine's less than that right now. Everybody's being pretty quiet. A purring cat is 25. Rustling leaves is 20. A whisper is 15. So it tells you different amounts. Now, a couple of things about your hearing. Let's talk about that. One is very loud noises can damage your hearing, and you can never get it back again. So be careful if you go to a rock concert or something that's going to be loud. Take earplugs. Don't let the sound man damage your hearing. Another thing is so a loud noise over a short period of time can damage your hearing, but also a less loud noise over a long period of time can damage your hearing. So you have to be careful if you are cutting the grass or you're doing something that's not quite so loud, but it's over a long period. It can still result in damaged hearing, and you don't want to lose your hearing. It makes people feel isolated and just lonely, and hearing is a thing that you want to keep. So be careful about your hearing. Another thing is sickness can damage your hearing. A high fever can damage your hearing, or a low fever over a long period of time. When I was just a little bit older than you guys, I just started college, I got sick and I had a low fever, and I went to the doctor and he tried to get me to do homeopathic remedies, and they didn't. So, and if I didn't get better, I was supposed to come back in 2 weeks. So I came back in 2 weeks. I didn't get better. He gave me some antibiotic that wasn't very strong, and he said, if it doesn't work, come back in 2 weeks. I came back in 2 weeks, and I had not gotten better. I had been sick for a month at this point, running a low fever every day. And at the end of that month, he finally gave me some strong antibiotic, and I had lost part of my hearing, never to get it back again. And it's in this ear, my mid-range hearing is just gone. And when I taught public school, I taught at a pretty wild school the first time, and I had some kids who figured out that I couldn't hear real good out of this ear. So if they wanted to say something and me not hear it, like use words you're not allowed to use in school, they'd get on my deaf ear side, and they figured out not to talk in a high or low, but right in the middle, and they could get away with cussing. And other kids would go, Miss Blackburn, didn't you hear that? And I'm like, no. And they're like, you need to write them up. I'm like, I can't write them up just because you said. I've got to hear it myself. But talk about smart kids to figure that out. I want to say this, I better go to Miss Blackburn's deaf ear and talk in this one little frequency where she's not going to hear it. So clever of them. So anyway, I never wrote anybody up for anything that I didn't hear. Couldn't do it. I couldn't swear that it really happened. It could be the other kid just setting them up, saying that they said it when they didn't. I think they said it because everybody was like, I think we all survived. I think we all survived the bad word in the classroom. All right, we're still here today. All right, so frequency and pitch. Pitch is how high or low an object, a sound is. And you can change the pitch by increasing the frequency. So there's a little lab that you're going to do where you take a rubber band and put it over a plastic ruler. And then you pluck it. And you move your finger to make it shorter, and you'll notice it gets higher and higher and higher. Okay, so that's a little activity you're going to do here is a pitch activity. You can also, anytime you're making the frequency increase, you can do this by putting water in bottles. And the lower the water is, you blow across it and it goes whoo, and then you blow over another one, whoo. that has less water, and less, it gets less with these standing waves I told you about. And then it goes, it'll be a very high pitch because it's a quick frequency. There are also ultrasonic and infrasonic waves, which are beyond our hearing. And as you get older, more is beyond your hearing. But ultrasonic, or you'll see in your book that they are above our hearing range. And you know, dogs can hear above what we hear. And the dog whistles, we blow them and we don't hear anything. Dogs can hear it. So they can hear, their hearing is beyond ours. And that's why I always say that if evolution is true, we're terrible at it. We have no superpowers, no animal superpowers. And then the other one is there can be sounds lower than what we hear, and elephants hear sounds lower than what we do. We used to think that elephants were silent, that they didn't really communicate. You know, like we know that dogs bark and, you know, squirrels chitter chatter or whatever, but we thought elephants were just strong and silent. Then somebody had the idea of recording them at these lower frequencies than what human ears can hear, and they are quite chattery. They talk all the time. But it's off of our hearing scale, so we thought they weren't making any noise. Very arrogant of us as humans, wasn't it? All right, so the next idea is the Doppler effect. And the Doppler effect is this, that if you are here and sound waves or something making sound is coming toward you, as the thing's coming toward you, it's going toward the sound waves it's producing, and it makes them come at a quicker frequency, where the sound waves it's producing behind them get spread out. So I always say that kids are most aware of this with motorcycles. So you're standing here and here comes a motorcycle and it goes by. But then as it passes you, it goes. Let me do it again. Here comes the motorcycle. It's not that the motorcycle is changing gears that goes by as you, it's the Doppler effect. You hear it with ambulances too. Whoa, 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 as it goes on by. And it's that the sound waves are being put closer together as it's coming toward you, and they're spreading out when it's going away from you. And we hear that because it's a change in frequency as a change in pitch. So this is a really useful thing. It's not just for noticing motorcycles going by. We use it in Doppler Radar. You hear about that on the news, on the weather. And what it is that they can use radar and tell by the Doppler effect if things are coming toward you or away from you. So if you have a cloud and part of it's going towards you and part of it's going away from you, it's rotating. Those are the clouds. The mesocyclone rotating clouds are the ones that make tornadoes. So that's how they can predict tornadoes, is they see these rotating clouds, the mesocyclones, and they can tell with Doppler effect. We also use it in astronomy. One of the physics classes I took in college was astronomy, and you could tell if heavenly bodies were moving towards you or away from you because of the Doppler effect also. So they could do it with light, just like with sound. So it's very interesting. Now, what is music? I've seen music described as pleasant noise, and that noise is anything you don't want to hear, and music is something you do want to hear. And sometimes I've heard some things called music and thought it was noise, let's be honest. And I'm sure there's some music I like that other people think are noise. But your book says that music is made of sound that are deliberately used in regular pattern. That sounds good, a good definition. I already told you that things have natural frequencies, and musical instruments use that. They use the fact that different instruments can produce sound and overtones and resonance, and these sounds can have interference. Remember where we talked about them flattening out or adding together? They can have these interferences the way they act together, and it can be pleasing. And all of these things, these extra sounds can be produced that work together. Now, this is a whole science called music theory. You can major in college in the thing I'm barely going to touch on, which is music theory. It's how these sounds interact together and how they produce these overtones and what sounds work together and chords and things like that. But So we're just going to barely touch it. You're going to read it in your book. But there are people who major in this in college and make a living at it. So, and I knew one. I knew somebody who did music theory. He used it for composition, and he did arrangements, and he made money. That's how he supported his family. So we already talked about resonance is produced by musical instruments, and it's amplified by resonance. So the natural vibration of the object will amplify the music. So like a guitar's natural resonance will amplify the strings being plucked. The guitar itself will then vibrate, and it makes amplification. Sound quality describes the difference among sounds of the same pitch and loudness. So you can play the same pitch and loudness on a guitar and on a trumpet, and they're going to sound completely different because of the instrument. They're going to have a different sound quality. And overtones, it talks about in your book, is a vibration whose frequency is a multiple of the fundamental frequency. So there are certain sounds that work together, and it's these overtones. You can look at the bottom of page 334. They explain how string instruments work. I talked about a little bit last time that you have a fundamental wavelength, and then you can do it faster, and it will make these standing waves where places where it doesn't vibrate, which are the nodes, and then you can do it even faster, and you can get more standing waves. And if we were meeting face-to-face, in class, I would get out my slinkies and we would do this. We would make these with slinkies. We would get at the right vibrations where you could see the standing waves. So we're not face-to-face, so you're not going to be able to do it. But I'm sure you can find some videos on it, if you search it, and where you can see the standing waves. I know they're on there. And you could also make it yourself with a slinky. You can get slinkies at the Dollar Tree for $1. I've gotten them before. All right, so stringed instruments, there's also brass and woodwinds where the metal is what is vibrating. Percussion instruments where you beat them and it is vibrating as you beat it. There's another thing called beats, and it's not you hitting the percussion thing. If you look in your book on page 337, you can suddenly hear, when you're listening to sound, sometimes this pulsating thing. It's like it's pulling on your eardrums going, oh, and it's very unpleasant. And it is caused by instrument interference. So they have to be careful. When two instruments play at the same time, the sound waves produced by each instrument interfere. The amplitudes of the waves can add together, and the compressions overlap and cancel out. And if two wavelengths of different frequencies interfere, a new wave is produced that has a different frequency. And it's the difference of the two frequencies. So that's why they tune the orchestra. They make sure that if you got two flutes, that they're in tune and they're playing the same notes, and you're not getting the beats thing going on. So that's all part of, you get there early for the orchestra, and they're doing all that tuning. That's why. Now, the next part of your book talks about using sound, things you can use sound for. People who study sound, it's called studying acoustic. There are engineers who specialize in sound on different levels. Like my husband was a sound engineer where he worked at a recording studio helping make albums. But then there are other people who design buildings, who are making sure that the sound works in the concert hall where there aren't dead spots where if you sit here, you're not going to hear right. Another thing that animals use, and people too, that use sound for is something called echolocation. That like bats bounce sound off of objects and can tell where they are located. We do that with sonar, with ships and things where they can find out where things are located. In your book, they talk about a shipwreck that was full of gold. In what year was that shipwreck? Did it say it? It was in the 1800s. More than 140 years ago. I think it was 1840s. This ship full of gold went down off the coast of South Carolina. It was called Central America. They used sonar, echolocation, in 1988 to find it. They found the ship. And I had to go read about it because your book didn't tell me enough. And they found it. They got the gold. and the gold was worth lots of money. They only took about 5% of the gold out of it, so about 95% is still off the coast of South Carolina. But after they got the gold, they've been tied up in court with the lawsuits. There were investors who said the guy who found it didn't give them enough money. He ran off with a bunch of the gold. Later they found him and his assistant holed up with the gold. They got the gold back. They gave it back to the investors. So he found that gold, and eventually in 96 they let him have 92% of the gold and made him only give back 8% to the investors. But then later the investors kept suing, and the people who worked for him and stuff, and I think eventually they got all the gold. So he did all the work and they got all the gold. And they hired, then the government hired a different group to go in and get the rest of the gold. So the guy who found it kind of did all the work and ended up without gold. So I'm sure there's a lesson there somewhere that we need to learn. I don't know what it is. Ultrasound, sound waves are also used in medicine. They can be used to break up kidney stones. You can use it to see stuff, do an ultrasound and see a joint, see a baby. If someone's pregnant, you can do an ultrasound and see if the baby's healthy, if it's a boy or a girl, all of those things. But one of the new things, so ultrasound can be used for imaging. One of the new things I just read about was they had done experiments in Australia where they used ultrasound on people's head who have Alzheimer's, because people with Alzheimer's have a buildup of plaque in their brain, and they used ultrasound on it and it broke it up. Now, I haven't heard of it being used here yet, but if it can work, that is a cheap, easy, every little doctor's office almost has an ultrasound machine, easy way to save people. Alzheimer's, results in death, and it's terrible, and there's no cure for it. So that's one of those things I'm kind of listening for. And if I think I'm getting Alzheimer's, I'll start, see if I can get an ultrasound machine and rub it on my head. I might scramble my brain, so maybe I shouldn't do that. Maybe I shouldn't do do-it-yourself medicine. Maybe I should hold off on that. That sounds smart. All right. So I'm Miss Lisa. This is Physical Science. Science is great. Like, share, subscribe. Come back next time, and we're going to talk about something very interesting called electromagnetic radiation.